I was regarded at Harvard Business School as being a communist.
This one is a bit of a mystery still, when my first tweet is going to happen.
Ken is fun, and Ken is a great friend to Barbie.
I call it catching the F train.
I was this fat unit, you know what I mean, in a suit, and it was clear that I was not the same as the others.
Hello everybody, great to see you again as we come to the end of another astonishing year. I'm absolutely delighted that for a first we're bringing a CMO from Africa to talk to us, and it's such a delight to see you, Folake Ani-Mumuney. I think I didn't butcher that name too badly, but I also know that your friends call you Fam, so is it okay if I call you Fam, make everything easier?
Certainly okay to call me Fam. I prefer to be called Fam. You might say Folake Ani-Mumuney, and I'm looking over my shoulders thinking, who are you referring to? So yes, Fam.
All right, Fam. Well, Fam, you know, I first met you when you joined the WFA Executive Committee. I know these days you're the CMO, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer of the First Bank of Nigeria. You also chair FBN Brokers, and you've got such a storied marketing career behind you already that at the tender age of, with a young lady, I must say early 50s, you've already got a Lifetime Achievement Award in marketing, which is great. But welcome. So I think you started at British Airways, but tell us your story, Fam. Tell us where you started, where you are now, what's on your mind, but above all, start with how you are. How are you?
I'm great. So
Good.
Diving straight in, a bit about myself. So early precocious child, parents felt, you know what, you've got a legal, head on your shoulders, you have to study law. Insisted on joining my sister to start school. She started, older sister that is, so she started earlier than I did, but I cried so much and the teachers would just leave her there, and I just stayed on there. So that meant that at the age when I needed to go into university, I was still a bit too young as far as my parents were concerned, and friends of theirs suggested, let her study philosophy. I was just happy to just get on and get into university. So my first degree was actually in philosophy, which was supposed to be a precursor to law. And I think it's the best thing they could have done for me. Philosophy just broadens your mind. It just totally changes, how you see the world. And that was great for me. I mean, young 15-year-old, first semester in university. In fact, I remember the very first day at uni, and there were 3 modules we took. There was philosophy of reasoning, there was philosophy of religion, and there was epistemology. And one of the things I remember was the lecturer walking in and just throwing out the word apple. And we were to all think about what an apple meant to us. And different people came at it from different perspectives. And he talked about how language perhaps shapes, or experiences, shapes our approach to life. So some people talked from the religious side, Adam and Eve. I didn't think that at all. I thought apple and I thought color. So I think I seen color. And some people actually talked about the earlier computers. I don't know, David, if you remember that. I mean, this was years back. And so computers weren't, the Apple computers weren't a big thing. So those who said computers, we looked at them as in really, and look at today, we all have a device that's an Apple device. But just to show you how instructive that particular first day was for me, it's totally changed my life and shaped my approach and outlook to life. The next lecturer came in and he talked about looking at the world through rose-tinted glasses, held up a piece of paper, white paper. They said, what color is this? And of course, we all said white. And he said, well, I'm wearing glasses and it's tinted, and that's my reality. So we had, a great debate on reality versus, so wonderful, introduction. And obviously went on to then study law in England after doing a first degree in philosophy in Nigeria. And at the time when I graduated, computers, and we were approaching an age where we knew that this was the next biggest thing. So I said to my parents, look, I know I've fast become a serial student, but there's just one more thing I still have to do. And that was business computing, systems analysis, and design. And, the 3 things, it took me a while to realize that what the 3 things have in common is logic and critical reasoning, and so people say, oh, you're a lawyer. I'm like, yes, I am, but I'm also a philosopher, and I'm also a computer geek. I can code. Well, I code. I'm not as great at it as I used to be. So Oracle, structured query language. Those are all things I learned, and it's logic at the end of the day that's behind that. And as you can imagine, in doing all of that, I spent a lot of time and then somehow got married to a wonderful man, and the children came along the way. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to be very structured about my career. I want it all. I want family and I want the career. So as the children came, I decided I needed a job that would keep me close to home. I was living in England then, a job that would take me close to home and that would give me an opportunity to go to Nigeria often because my parents were in Nigeria. And, that's how I ended up at British Airways. And again, the best choice I could have made. I think somehow I just fall into these things, and I believe it's the best thing that could have happened to me. So British Airways, amazing career. I started as a strategist, a business analyst, and to keep closer to home, worked my way into marketing, and at some point became the marketing manager, West Africa. Worked for the Casimir region out of the UK, was manager for Europe and Africa by the time I left, which meant several countries, multiple languages, again, opportunities that, just can't be described. But always had that draw for Africa, always wanted to contribute to Africa. In fact, I remember when I was leaving British Airways, they looked up the form I filled when I was joining. And one of the things I put on there was an opportunity to contribute to the development of Africa. And this was me leaving many, many years later. And that was the same reason I was giving up such a wonderful opportunity with British Airways to go back to Africa and see, how can I help? You've got great brands, out of the rest of the world. How can I help to better tell, a better narrative of Africa? How can I support some of those brands and really bring some of the amazing things we do that I know that comes out of Africa, to the rest of the world. So I joined the Dangote Group.
You're going to have to help us, Fam, because we're not as familiar as we should be with Nigerian brands. But I do know that the Dangote Group is one of Africa's biggest conglomerates, most successful. And I also know that you'd reached such fame and such excellence in your job that they came looking for you. You didn't go looking for them. But tell us that phase of your story. By the way, your triple degree, I'm thinking here, I'm trying to find my cycling proficiency badge to wave it at you. I'm amazing academic background, but it served you well. And I love your plan and thought about your career. Great role model for all sorts of people, actually. So it's wonderful to hear. But this switch must have been an interesting one, because did it involve moving back home as well, moving back to Nigeria?
Yes, it did. But that's what I wanted. My husband had moved back to Nigeria. I'll tell you what it was. So there were days when, I'd be up really early, 4:30 a.m. in the morning. My taxi would have been booked because, yes, with Europe, you have the very early morning flights and you had to be in Paris or you had to be in Zurich. And by the time I was coming back, could be the same day, I'd be coming back into the house about 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. Now, how many hours of work have you actually had versus how many hours, commuting? I say to everybody, my commute must be one of the most interesting, because I could be commuting today in just London, or I could be commuting to Joburg, but I didn't think anything of it until the very day when, I came in really tired and there was a message saying my next taxi was booked for 5 a.m. The very next morning. But it meant that consistently, for about 4 to 6 weeks, I hadn't been home and I hadn't seen my parents. My parents are elderly. And I sat down and I thought, I wonder how many more years, I'd have with my dad, amazing man, orthopedic surgeon, my mother, very interesting. I thought, I wonder how many more years I'd have with them. I also thought to myself, my children haven't actually had a chance to get to know their grandparents really well. Well, I'm moving back to Nigeria, and that was it. Now, indeed, I did have companies, and organizations and people who, over the years, Folake, do this for us, do that for us. So yes, that's how Dangote was one of the ones. And I picked up the phone and I said, okay, I think I'm ready now. And so I found myself at the Dangote Group. Now, Dangote, like you said, one of the largest conglomerates. Again, one of the best stories out of Africa. The sorts of stories I said, I really wanted to tell about African companies doing amazing things. Their philosophies around providing your basic needs to it started as basic needs to every Nigerian, but now basic needs to Africans. And keeping it really simple, they thought about evolution and, food, shelter, clothing, and took it a notch higher. And today, and you can see that trajectory over years, today now, they're in, energy and data, which is actually part of our basic needs as of today. So a company that, had purpose at the heart of what they do. So they're into refining salt, sugar. I mean, it's a great manufacturing conglomerate. And part of what we love about what the Dangote story is, so they started by in commodity trading, but then practiced backward integration. So it meant looking for the local solutions. And I think that's one of the things that Africa absolutely needs. We must find a lot of local solutions, bring the manufacturing local to Nigeria, to rest of Africa, so that we can take advantage of the incredible labor force that you have here, and we can drive productivity. So yes, I believed in everything that they wanted to do, and came on board. So I was the first pioneer chief marketing and communications officer. And we decided that, if we're taking our story to the world, package, the story. So we built the brand from inside out. We looked at our identity. We looked at our purpose. It was such a great opportunity. With British Airways, I was a part of something that was long established. With Dangote, I was part of something it wasn't new by the time I joined, but this was its foray into the world. This was Dangote taking itself to the rest of the world. And I must say, even though I've left now for a while, they've done such an amazing job of it.
Yes, I mean, I always find that any company I've worked for, I end up carrying a lifetime membership of the soap opera. You can't help but be interested in the companies you work
yes.
for. And so how did you get from after Dangote, then we share financial services in common. It was into the First Bank of Nigeria. Tell us about that transition.
So what's my passion? Heritage brands. And I think, again, it was British Airways that birthed that. And I felt that there was something so totally different about being able to take a heritage brand, and being able to take that story and drive the dynamism you're having there and the relevance. So First Bank Group, over 127 years old now, and still relevant today to today's world, to the burgeoning youth population out of Africa. Just a great brand to be a part of. I've never thought about the sectors, and I'll tell you why, David. I think, whatever sector it is that I'm in, it's all about people. So you are marketing to people, it's about connecting with people, and it's about the engagement and how you can make sure that, again, it's an organization that has purpose at the heart of what it's doing, so that it meets, the needs of people. So financial services, I didn't think about it in terms of, well, this is a different sector. No, I felt it was exactly the same thing. I needed to create value, demonstrate value, and make sure that, customers were prepared to buy out the value that we were creating for them by positioning it right. So First Bank, like I said, again, this was a brand that needed a bit of real diamond, but it just needed a bit of polishing at the time. So again, that's why they came looking for me, and they said, look, Folake, we think you can do this for us. We want to appeal to a younger audience without alienating, our older, loyal customers. And it's been an amazing journey, and it still is. First Bank gave me such an opportunity to make a real difference, and it's a great brand.
Well, also presumably, back to one of your earlier statements, a real difference for Africa as well. I mean, being in a bank, you realize that it is indeed money that makes the world go round, and banks that do the right thing in the right way really have a phenomenal impact on society.
Regardless of which sector you're working in, it's, for me, understanding your business model, understanding your strategy is the only way to really market and market properly. So it's not about the campaigns for themselves. It's because there's a need to be met. There's an objective. Now, one of the things that we needed to do in transitioning for our group, the First Bank Group, was making sure, like I said, that we appealed to the younger generation, but really making sure that banking is technology driven, isn't it? I'm going to stop there, and I'm actually going to talk about one thing. I think one of the things that I picked up across 3 different organizations that I've mentioned so far is I did my best work when I focused on technology. I did my best work when I looked ahead and, really decided that, digitization was what was going to drive us. So in First Bank, we invested in infrastructure, the technology infrastructure that underpinned the banking business. And what happened was we realized that, that was incredible foresight on our part. We developed what we call agency banking. And agency banking meant the ability for agents to actually be at every almost street, every local government agency, where you could go into a chemist, for example, and you could cash out. Nigeria is a very cash-based society. Most of Africa is. So technology was there. We'd been building it up, but the adoption wasn't quite at the levels that we knew we could get to. We didn't realize that it would happen so quickly. So we were ready for COVID. The minute COVID hit and the world became contactless, as it were, we had all the solutions in place. We had a number of different contactless solutions that meant that financial services wouldn't be disrupted. A great thing that we also did then, because we were ready, we didn't have to then focus on rejigging our systems or our infrastructure. We simply switched over. It meant we were able to protect our staff and decide, you know what, branches need not open, we shut branches, and we could really deliver the end-to-end financial services solutions required, the end-to-end banking required for a lot of our customers. We were there and ready to also offer those services to a lot of our partners. The SMEs, the engine of growth, like you said, they needed a lot of help. And what we realized is this is a time where we wear that cap of being, you know, advisors. Our advisory cap was on, our partnering cap was on, you know, how do you restructure your loans? What do you need at this particular time? And you could reach us. It was so important that we were accessible. And part of what we did as a department, I remember, was because we had the resources, if you think about it, to deliver COVID messages, to make sure that, you know, the communications was just being rolled out regularly. And we, you know, decided, let's offer that to the smaller businesses. So my team became kind of like an extension of your team if you wanted it. You know, you could go and download things that we had prepared that was generic, and you just plaster on, you know, your logo, you personalize it as you want. And we then tried to do that for different sectors, imagining what they would need, because they were our customers and we're doing this for our customers. So on the one hand, we were able to help them with actual financial services. On the other hand, we were able to help them with other things. So what we challenged other parts of the bank to do as well is, wherever you find yourself, how can you do more? What you're doing, is there extra capacity that could then be shared? That was great. But the third and final thing that I thought was really good was we looked around and we saw that a number of organizations, the governments, they'd stepped up in, you know, the area of health interventions around COVID. Yeah. And we thought, well, there are other vulnerable groups. And in Africa, our children don't necessarily have access to online learning. So schooling and education was disrupted. So First Bank, we're really very proud of the fact that we said, you know, leave no one must be left behind. We didn't want to leave even the last child behind. And we started a program around trying to get 1 million children onto e-learning. But the whole idea was we would get other organizations and other corporates and other people to join us in this ambition. Now that's an ambition and an aspiration that will really change how we do things in Africa. So from out of COVID, and even when COVID's gone, or if, you know, we would still have that, we would have made a real difference. And I think those are the sorts of things I'm really proud of. When you do things that's a real change, that really has impact. It's an amazing, amazing program. We saw the results where the children who were put on the program, partnering with the state governments, partnering with some of the telecom companies who gave us data, and in particular going data-less, which I didn't think, you know, so we looked for those solutions that wouldn't require internet access per se. It's just amazing results. At the first set of exams they did about 8 months later, the children who benefited from that were top of the country index. So that was really good.
Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. And I think, you know, the power of a bank to convene customers around consumer interests is much underrated. But that's a fantastic case study. Maybe you'll share it with our watchers with some kind of detail, if you don't mind. I mean, could change tack slightly. I remember when I joined Barclays, the first country I visited was Uganda. These were in the days that Barclays had Uganda. And when I went there, I said, listen, and they said, why have you come here? Why didn't you go to South Africa? And I said, because I prefer to start in the real Africa. Because you know, I had lived through my Vodafone days with that kind of notion that South Africa thought it was the real Africa and the rest of it could follow in that kind of patronizing way. And I loved all of my visits to African countries, and indeed South Africa. I'm not knocking South Africa, but what's interesting is 10 years ago, there was a lot of multinational focus on Africa as the rising economy and what was going to happen. Lots of Chinese incoming investment in the Belts and Roads program. And these days, of course, everybody's eyes have turned east to Asia. Can you talk to, how does that feel? Because for me, Africa remains a phenomenal engine of growth. Love that story you've just told is amazing. And many, many companies around the world could learn from it. But we don't talk enough about what's happening in Africa. How does that feel?
Well, I can totally understand, why, because Africa is a difficult continent sometimes to really unpack and to unravel. But that's partly because we look at it through a particular lens, and we see Africa as a one size fits all. And I think that's sometimes a mistake. So it's interesting that you said, you decided to go to the real Africa. South Africa is as different to Uganda as, Liberia is to Nigeria in the West, and the same and even within Nigeria, the markets are so totally different. So part of what you must look at in the African context is the country, but also the cities. So country and cities, so totally different. Now, I think the challenge has been really understanding Africa. I think any organization, any large corporate looking for growth that ignores Africa, ignores it to its own peril. The case for Africa is made, look at the size of the population, the growing population. It's a great market just from that. The ability to leapfrog in Africa is almost second to none, because you're starting from a position where you can actually shape things based on what you've learned. But it means it requires organizations who have agility and who recognize that and can do that. The third thing about Africa that's really simple is you must recognize that if you meet the needs of the growing population, chances are you will succeed, but you need to have insights. Now, unfortunately, we're not rich in data. We haven't aggregated and collated all of that. So it's sometimes challenging to the outsider who really wants data to be able to work with. And I think that's one of the barriers sometimes that makes it challenging for organizations. But honestly, ignore Africa at your own peril. I think this is the next growth spurt. I think there was a McKinsey report, that talked about the GDP, of most of out of the leading countries globally, about 6 of them, the fastest growing economies in the world, about 6 of them are here in Africa. And as a result of that, I think there are real opportunities for those companies who are bold enough to say, you know what, we're going to crack this. And we saw that happening with a lot of the Chinese companies, like you said, coming in, setting up. But a lot of them have also had challenges. But it's not so much about the entry. I think it's not so much about the entry strategy. I think it's about really understanding that it's very different. It's not a one size fits all. And if you really want to grow and scale across Africa, then you need to recognize that, and recognize that you need to come at it from a different mindset altogether. When I say Africa is a growth opportunity we've had a number of entrants who've had to leave. So organizations who've come in and who within a few years have decided it's not working for them. You also need to have a long-term mindset if you're to, succeed in Africa. It cannot be a short-term mindset. It's got to be a longer-term mindset. But you've also got to collaborate. So you can't come into Africa as a Western company, for example, without making the effort to localize. You must think global, but also local at the same time. That term local works best in Africa.
Yeah, it's interesting because in my Vodafone days, I think Africa is also underrated for being a center of innovation. One of Vodafone's greatest innovations, M-Pesa, was from Vodafone in Kenya, and you'll know that well. But I also think on this, when we were rebranding places, one of my favorite workshops of all time was in Ghana, when the brand identity was localized for Ghana with Ghanaian culture. And the power you get from that, I know it's a cliche, but when you do the glocal thing correctly is quite something. And I suppose, back to COVID for a minute, one of the things neither of us have done, I wish I was sitting interviewing you in Lagos person to person. It'd be much more fun. But of course, travel has also been impacted. and actually from a corporate perspective, an awful lot of CFOs looking at the budget line that's gone right down, going, oh, we'll keep that right down. And yet, how is that richness of people connection to happen unless you can see and feel and experience a culture? I mean, what's your thinking on that? And what would you say to multinationals who are going, oh, we don't need to travel to Africa anymore, we can just do it all on screen?
As with everywhere, whether it be Africa, whether it be Europe, like I said, when I managed Europe, travel to Europe was essential for me to get a sense and a feel, of the people. Look, authenticity is the most important thing in terms of engagement. Really connecting with people, you need that authenticity. And sometimes you could have a decision maker who's based elsewhere, and no matter how well the local team try to articulate it, sometimes that leader needs to just, get his hands, get into the space and really connect and really understand how that connection with the people make the people feel that they are part of the brand. I was talking about collaboration. It's not about presenting a brand or presenting products or services or a solution to people. It's about co-creating. And I think Africans work best when they feel that they're part of a solution. You said earlier on about innovation. Honestly, when I talk about leapfrogging, we find that it's a hotbed of innovation. Around the world, currently, some of the greatest innovations happening out of Africa, and sometimes not even taken to the rest of the world, which is a pity, mean that there are solutions that Africans are providing for Africans that really could be exported. I remember, I think in my BA days, one of the first things that was easy for me to observe is what we had a challenge in terms of how to grow sales. And I felt, this challenge it's not so much a sales challenge, it's a distribution challenge. And when you have that sort of mindset, and then you can see the opportunities. So what did I do? I looked around and I thought, okay, who has the footprints that we need? We were not about to set up shop in every single state, in every single country across Africa. But who has the footprint? And we thought, okay, do petrol stations have the footprint? Do we still have post offices in Africa? And, most of them. And I ended up with the banks. And we decided, okay, let's approach some of the banks and see if they would become our distribution network. And what did we do? I decided I wanted a situation where we could sell our tickets. We were now moving into online ticket sales. Remember the days of e-tickets, paper tickets, and then we're moving into online tickets. And once you had that, it meant actually I could sell a ticket to anybody from anywhere. Picture a man who lives in, say, Maiduguri, which is really distant from the commercial hub, which is Lagos or Abuja. And this man would then have to either get on a flight just to go and buy his ticket, and then go back, and then come back again to Lagos or Abuja on the date he was to travel. Well, what we then did was we decided, go into your local bank, whatever bank branch you have there, pay for your ticket, and we will email you your e-ticket. And then you only need to travel on the day of your departure to Lagos. And of course, that totally gave us the edge in leaps and bounds. So That was a solution that was challenging, because even explaining that to British Airways head office, I remember the number of times I went into our head office then Waterside, and that's where I started my career from. So I still had a number of friends, was still very much, and I think that's what helped. So I was I was in country and could see the opportunities because I was in country. But I also had people who flew in regularly who I could show that to. That was a solution that came out of Nigeria, was exported across West Africa. We took it to Bangladesh, and I think we took it to Mexico. We looked at other markets that had a similar problem and took it. It's one of the things I'm most proud of, because it was a solution that came out of here. Obviously, it meant looking at our systems. I remember Treasury was like, what are you talking about? And stakeholder management meant, I needed to engage everybody, to get their buy-in and to say that this is possible. And the results were just phenomenal. So innovation out of Africa is one of the things that I think works best when you're able to actually see and understand what the real needs of the people are. If you're not solving for the big problems, then it's very unlikely that you would have a sustainable growth. But if you're solving for real problems, you get the stickiness, that's required for that long-term thinking I was talking about. Because honestly, if CFOs and if our board is only looking at shareholder returns. Well, you might think that the shareholder returns will be there for you if you focus on Africa. If your lens is the next quarter or the last quarter, and by half year you're thinking, what's going on? There's a seasonality to the African market. It's still a cash-based society, and so therefore, if you think about it, credit is not well developed here. As a result of that, that seasonality means that you must really understand those cycles and perhaps use the right lenses to look at your numbers and to look at your return on investment. And that's, I think, the way multinationals must look at Africa.
Fantastic, Fam. Absolutely delightful learning here for everybody. I think one of the great leadership values necessary today is humility, in my view. And I think we share a passion in common as well, which is developing people. So I take great pleasure with my disappearing grey hair at watching people I once worked with do extremely well. And I think you're the same. So can you talk a little bit about your leadership style? Because I know a lot of your ex-team have done very well and are entrepreneurial and are building very strong careers. You must be so proud of that.
Oh, yes. I mean, that just, look at the smile on my face. It's, from ear to ear at this point when you talk about that. Right. So empathy. And I think it's one of I believe it's just one of the strengths that I have. And it started accidentally. It started with me observing that wherever I worked, and if I moved on or if I had projects I was doing, people who I worked with on those projects would come and say, I'd like to work with you. If you're doing anything else again, I'm happy to volunteer. And I tried to then think, well, what's that about? And I realized it's three things. One, I wanted to do a great job, but I really wanted to have fun doing it. It's so important to have fun doing, whatever it is you're doing. We spend so much time, such a huge part of our working lives, such a huge part of our lives working. It should be fun. So two, I make it fun. And three, I really give credit. And I really appreciate when, people roll up the socks. At the same time, I could be terrible when you make a promise and then you don't deliver to it, or don't be the weakest link. But yeah, I really give credit, and I think so that's how it started. It was accidental, and because I'm really interested in my team and in their growth, and in learning and really making sure that do you find this rewarding? It meant that within the team itself and within all the teams I've had, I could find somebody who I thought, your strengths are better suited to this. And I'm very happy to do the rotation. I think a third thing is in being able to really sacrifice and recognize that your growth, you would grow better if you were in this role, or it's now time for you to try and cut your teeth on something else. And dare I say it, I actually look for work for some of my team members where I feel, you've learned as much as you can in this environment or from me. And I think you should go for that interview, not because you're going to work there, but maybe because, the interview session would do you really good. You can place a value, on your own skills, and on what you've learned. And, building that confidence. I throw my people in front of the entire leadership team of any organization I work with. Because at the end of the day, if they're not able to represent me well, then I haven't done a great job of making sure it can't be about me. So I think empathy is really what's at the heart of that. I think some of them would tell you I'm a bit of a slave driver, but at the same time, if you needed time off, if you needed, we would all be there. So what's happened since then is we've got what we now call the School of Fam. And they're so convinced that, oh yes, and there is a School of Fam, and it's great to just see pools and pockets of people I've worked with who have now brought on other people who are working with them. And those other people who've never worked with me know about FAM. No, FAM would say this, or what would FAM think? And so that's been great. And the more we replicate that, I think what it does for the industry, for the marketing communications profession, is it raises the bar for us and begins to put some of us in those C-suites, in the rooms that typically and traditionally in Africa, it's not a path to the C-suite necessarily. And that's why I was so proud to be asked to come and chair one of the subsidiaries, to chair the board of one of the subsidiaries. That for me meant that what I'd preached all along, which is it's about having a solutions mindset Don't stay in one corner and think, yes, I'm Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, and then you don't look at what the Chief Risk Officer is doing. I'm very vocal, so, you get into the organization so that you're there creating value wherever you may be found. And then that's how you break that ceiling, and then you've got Marcom's professionals now leading other aspects of the business. I have several of my colleagues who worked with me, who either worked with me at British Airways, joined me at First Bank, on different projects, heading the Marcom's function. They're the chief marketing officers in their own right. But they also are able to point to the fact that, well, if FAM can lead that board, then I can lead this board as well. So you've got some of them on boards of Standard Chartered, and it's really new and different. 10 years ago, we didn't have that in this market.
Well, listen, it's been wonderful to have such a value-adding conversation with you, and I think a great way to end the year, and great value to all of the WFA members. So we always end on two things, but because this is our Christmas edition, I'm going to add a third one. So the first thing is, what do you think CMOs should have top of their list if they're, at the moment? What should they be focusing on?
I'm going to, for me, still the same thing that I felt they should focus on, about 10 years ago? Digitization, the digital journey, technology, artificial intelligence, the future of marketing. So it's that same thing. If you don't have a digital hat on or technology lens through which you're looking at whatever it is you're doing, please do so. The world is going to be very different, and we're in it already. So that's the one thing I'd say everybody should have an appreciation for.
Fantastic. And second question is always, who else do you think we should be talking to? Who should be sitting?
Oh my goodness, I have a long list of them. I'm going to mention only two of them. So one's Kate Thornton, and I met her at British Airways. She was my boss. Amazing woman. And just listening to, I don't think I've spoken to Kate now in I don't know how many years, but I've listened to some podcasts that she's done, and she really puts the customer at the heart of the business. And I think that's being part of the success and the reason why she really remains a great speaker. And listening to her, you just feel the warmth and the things she's done in her career as well. Just makes her a very interesting CMO to talk to. So Kate Thornton would be one. But I also have somebody else. He's African. His name's Ehi Benite. He's Ghanaian. And honestly, Ehi's just the most, again, innovative, creative solution provider. So if you ask me what I do, I don't say to you I'm a marketer or I'm a lawyer. No, I'm a solution provider. And I think as Africans, that really is what we should be, because there's still so much to do. And Ehi has created, innovated, founded so many things. But he thinks with a marketer's mindset, because he designs and innovates for customers. And when he talks marketing, I'm thinking, why aren't you here? Why are you on that side? So that would be another person that I think would be great to listen to.
Wonderful. And then my third addition to the questions is that time of year when we reflect on what's gone by and we start to think about what's coming, and it's usual to have a New Year resolution. What would yours be, Fam, as you go into 2022?
So that's a difficult and a challenging one for me. But I'm going to try and kind of wrap it up in, I think I'm going to live more. So that's what it is. I'm going to be intentional and deliberate about living more. And living more for me is so wide. So I'm going to experiment with certain things. I'm going to experiment with letting go. I love to travel. Haven't done that because of COVID. So living more would mean travel. Living more would mean deeper, intentional relationships, which COVID taught me. So yeah, I'm going to live more.
Well, that's wonderful. And listen, I look forward to seeing you when we both travel to Athens for the WFA.
Looking forward to that.
And we will indeed.
I really can't wait.
Well, can I just say,
Absolutely.
What an absolute delight to talk to you, Fam, and so much learning and so much joy in your face when you were talking about your people. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And
thank you, David.
Thank you, Folake. Everybody else, have a wonderful festive season with your families and your friends and those who are dear to you. Reflect reward yourself with some time off and get ready for another amazing year in this wonderful world of marketing. Happy holidays and New Year to all of you. Thank you so much.